The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony just like it had for the past 15 years. Children played in the streets while their parents went to work in the farms and factories. Nobody knew this would be their last day alive. Governor Patricia Moore stood on her office balcony watching the busy city below. She had built this place from nothing. When the first ships arrived at Kepler 442b 15 years ago, there was only empty land and alien trees. Now 2.5 million people called New Haven home. Patricia had been a soldier before becoming governor. She fought in the border wars back on Earth. But those days were behind her now. New Haven was peaceful. The colonists grew food, made goods, and raised their families far from the problems of old Earth. Commander Jake Sullivan was doing his morning patrol in his small fighter ship. He flew around the planet every day, checking for asteroids or space, junk that might hit the colony. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. The colony only had 12 fighter ships and 30 pilots. They were not built for war. Jake was checking his instruments when something made him look up. Space was twisting and bending in front of him. Bright flashes appeared where there should be empty darkness. His heart began to beat faster. Something big was coming. The flashes grew brighter and bigger. Then, like monsters stepping out of nightmares, huge alien ships appeared. Jake had never seen anything so large. Each ship was longer than the biggest city on New Haven. There were hundreds of them, maybe 200, all painted in dark metal with sharp edges. Jake grabbed his radio. "This is Sullivan to control. We have unknown ships in our space. Big ones. Really big ones." The voice that answered him was calm but worried. "Sullivan, get back here now. We're reading the same thing." Jake turned his fighter around and flew as fast as he could toward the colony. Behind him, the alien ships moved into position above New Haven. They looked like hungry wolves surrounding a sheep. On the planet below, people stopped what they were doing to look up at the sky. The alien ships were so big they blocked out parts of the sun. Children pointed and asked their parents what they were. Nobody had an answer. Lisa Carter was working in the deep mines when the alarm bells started ringing. She was a mining engineer, one of the best on the planet. The bells meant everyone had to stop work and get ready for emergency. Lisa had never heard them ring before. She ran to the communication center in the mine. The big screen showed the alien ships hanging in space like dark clouds. Her hands shook as she tried to call her husband and daughter in the city above. "All lines are busy," the computer said. "Please try again later." But there would be no later. The alien ships began to glow. Bright red lights appeared along their bottom sides. Patricia Moore stood in her office trying to contact the aliens on every frequency she knew. She sent messages in 12 different languages. She offered to talk, to trade, to help them with whatever they needed. The aliens did not answer. Commander Sullivan reached the colony's small defense station just as the first shots came down from space. Beams of pure energy, bright as lightning, struck the city center. Buildings turned to glass and melted. People vanished in flashes of light. "All fighters, get up here now," Sullivan shouted into his radio. "We're under attack," but 30 small fighter ships could not stop 200 alien warships. Sullivan watched his friends die as alien weapons tore their ships apart. He fired his missiles at the nearest enemy ship. They exploded against its shields like firecrackers against a mountain. Down on the planet, Patricia Moore tried to get people into the underground shelters, but the alien weapons were too powerful. They burned through rock and metal like it was paper. The shelters became ovens that cooked everyone inside. Lisa Carter managed to send one message to Earth before the communications array melted. She pointed her emergency camera at the screen showing the attack. Her voice was calm even though death was coming for her. "This is New Haven Colony. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. They came without warning. They won't talk to us. They're killing everyone." She paused as another explosion shook the mine. "Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them we tried to be peaceful. Tell them." The transmission ended. Above the planet, the alien commander watched the destruction with satisfaction. War Marshal Kethvar had killed many species before humans. His people, the Zephyrians, had ruled this part of space for thousands of years. They did not allow other species to grow strong. The humans had spread to too many worlds. They built too many colonies. They had to be stopped before they became a threat. The best way to stop them was to show them what happened to species that grew too bold. Kethvar had chosen New Haven because it was far from Earth. By the time the humans learned what happened, his fleet would be gone. The humans would understand. The message: stay small, stay weak, or die. The bombardment continued for 6 hours. When it was over, New Haven was gone. The cities were pools of melted metal. The farms were fields of ash. The 2.5 million people were shadows burned into the ground. Only one human ship survived to see the end. Captain Ryan Brooks had been delivering supplies to the outer system when the attack began. His small freighter was too far away to help, too weak to fight. All he could do was watch and record everything. The alien ships hung over the dead world for 1 more hour. Then they twisted space around themselves and vanished, leaving only silence and death behind. Captain Brooks began the long journey back to Earth. In his ship's computer was the proof of what had happened. Pictures of the alien ships, records of the attack, Lisa Carter's final message. The news would reach Earth in 2 days. When it did, everything would change. Humanity had always been peaceful. They preferred to talk instead of fight. They shared their worlds with alien refugees. They traded fairly with other species. They believed all thinking beings could live together in peace. But the Zephyrians had made a mistake. They thought peaceful meant weak. They thought humans would accept the murder of their children and do nothing. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The message from New Haven reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Captain Ryan Brooks had pushed his old freighter harder than ever before, jumping through hyperspace without stopping to rest or refuel. When he arrived in Earth orbit, his ship was falling apart, but the data in his computers was complete. President Helen Rodriguez was eating breakfast when her security chief woke her up. "Madam President, you need to see this right now." Helen had been president for 6 years. She had seen wars, natural disasters, and terrorist attacks, but nothing had prepared her for what she saw on the screen. The alien ships hanging over New Haven like giant metal vultures, the bright beams of death falling from space, the cities turning to glass and melting. Her coffee cup fell from her hands and broke on the floor. "How many?" she whispered. 2.3 million, Madam President, all of them." Helen Rodriguez had grown up in the poor neighborhoods of old Detroit. She had fought her way through politics by being tougher and smarter than everyone else. She had never cried in public, not once. But as she watched Lisa Carter's final message, tears ran down her face. Within 1 hour, every leader on Earth was watching the same footage. The Prime Minister of the European Alliance called the President of the Asian Federation. The Chairman of the African Union spoke with the first Speaker of the American States. For the first time in 50 years, every human government agreed on something. War Admiral Kevin Turner was the oldest man in the Global Defense Council meeting room. He had fought in space battles when most of the other officers were still children. His hair was white, his face was covered with scars, and his eyes had seen too much death. But when he watched the New Haven footage, he cried like a baby. "Those poor kids," he whispered. "Those poor innocent kids." The council meeting lasted 18 hours. Every military leader on Earth and in the colonies attended by video link. They argued about ships and weapons and tactics, but they all agreed on the main point: the aliens had to pay. Dr. Amanda Foster was Earth's best military planner. She had designed the defense systems that protected the home system. She had written the books that every naval officer studied. When Admiral Turner asked her to plan the response to New Haven, she locked herself in her office for 3 days. When she came out, she carried a folder marked Operation Ragnarok. "We're going to build the biggest fleet in human history," she told the council. "Every shipyard, every factory, every mine will work for this one purpose. We will build so many ships that the sky will be black with them." The plan was simple but massive. Earth would build 500,000 warships, not small patrol boats or cargo ships. Real warships with big guns and thick armor. Ships designed to kill other ships and destroy planets. Captain Nicole Adams ran the shipyards around Saturn. Her factories had built peaceful cargo ships and exploration vessels for 20 years. When she got the new orders, she called her workers together. "Friends," she said, "we have new work to do. The aliens killed our people at New Haven. They murdered children. Now we're going to build the ships that will make them pay." The workers cheered. Then they got to work. Every human world received the same orders. The mining colonies in the asteroid belt doubled their metal production. The factory world started building weapons instead of farming equipment. The research stations began designing new types of warships. Senator Paul Martinez stood before the Global Assembly to read the Declaration of War. The assembly hall was packed with representatives from every human world. Outside, crowds filled the streets of every major city on Earth. "Citizens of Earth and all human colonies," he began. 48 hours ago, the Zephyrian Collective attacked our colony at New Haven without warning. They murdered 2.3 million innocent men, women, and children. They burned our cities and turned our world to ash. The crowd was silent. Even the children stopped playing to listen. The aliens think we are weak because we are peaceful. They think we will accept this massacre and do nothing. They are wrong. His voice grew louder and stronger. Today, humanity declares war on the Zephyrian Collective. We will build a fleet so large that it will darken their skies. We will hunt them down no matter where they hide. We will not stop until every ship they use to murder our children is burning metal in space. The crowd roared its approval. On every human world, people watched the speech and cheered. They wanted to send us a message with the blood of our children. We will send them a message in return. When they see our fleet coming for them, they will understand that humanity protects its own, and humanity never forgives the murder of innocents. Colonel Sandra Hayes coordinated with the outer colonies. Every human settlement, no matter how small, wanted to help. Mining stations donated all their metals. Trading posts offered their ships. Even the exploration teams on the edge of known space sent back rare materials for the war effort. The work began immediately. On Luna, the old shipyards were expanded to 10 times their original size. New construction bays were built in by the asteroid belt. Giant factories on Mars started making armor plating and weapon systems. General Marcus Thompson oversaw the entire project. He had built cities on hostile worlds and managed the terraforming of 3 planets. But organizing the production of 500,000 warships was the biggest challenge of his life. "We need everything," he told his staff. "Every piece of metal, every computer chip, every bolt and wire. Nothing else matters until this fleet is ready." The transformation of human civilization happened faster than anyone thought possible. Luxury goods factories started making military equipment. Entertainment companies began producing training programs for naval crews. Even artists and musicians joined the effort, writing songs and making videos to keep morale high. Chief engineer Linda Powell designed 3 new types of warships. The Vengeance-class destroyers were fast and deadly, perfect for hunting down enemy ships. The Justice-class cruisers carried long-range missiles that could strike targets from across a solar system. The Retribution-class battleships were floating fortresses that could take on entire enemy fleets. Captain Steve Morgan was put in charge of training the new crews. In peacetime, the human navy had 200,000 sailors. The new fleet would need 100 million. Volunteers came from every world and every job. Farmers learned to operate missile systems. Teachers became ship captains. Students became gunners. "We're not just building ships," Morgan told his training officers. "We're building an army. The biggest, most motivated army in the history of our species." The aliens had made one critical mistake. They thought humans were like other species they had conquered. They expected Earth to negotiate or surrender or simply accept the massacre. Instead, humanity united like never before. Old enemies became allies. Rich and poor worked side by side. Every human colony, every space station, every mining outpost contributed to the war effort. As the months passed, the fleet began to take shape. Thousands of new ships launched every day from shipyards across human space. Each one was painted, with the same symbol, a burning star to represent New Haven, and the words, "Never again" in 100 human languages. Admiral Claire Bennett was chosen to command the fleet. She had never lost a battle in 30 years of service. When President Rodriguez offered her the job, she accepted immediately. "Those aliens think they can murder our children and walk away," she said. "We're going to show them what happens when you hurt a human family." By the end of the first year, the fleet was ready. 500,000 warships hung in space around Earth like a steel cloud. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. The most powerful military force ever created by any species. The journey to Zephyrian space would take 3 months. When they arrived, the aliens would learn what human justice looked like. They would understand that some acts could never be forgiven. The fleet that left Earth carried with it the fury of an entire species. Every sailor, every officer, every gunner remembered the footage from New Haven. They remembered Lisa Carter's final message. They remembered the children who died in the flames. The aliens had wanted to send humanity a message. Now humanity was ready to send one back. The space between Earth and Mars had never seen anything like it. Where once there had been empty darkness, now giant construction platforms floated like metal islands. The Terra Yard stretched for millions of kilometers, filled with shipbuilding, stations, supply depots, and worker housing. General Marcus Thompson stood on the observation deck of Construction Platform Alpha, watching thousands of ships take shape at the same time. Sparks flew from welding torches. Giant cranes moved armor plates the size of city blocks. Workers in spacesuits crawled over half-built warships like ants building their nest. "How many ships finished today?" he asked his assistant. 3,000, sir. 2,000 destroyers, 800 cruisers, and 200 battleships. Thompson nodded. 3,000 ships in one day. Before the war, humanity built maybe 50 ships per year. Now they were launching more ships in a single day than they used to build in a decade. Chief Engineer Linda Powell had designed the new warships to be built fast and hit hard. The Vengeance-class destroyers were her pride and joy. Each one was 400 meters long and packed with weapons. They carried fusion torpedoes that could crack a moon in half and rail guns that fired metal slugs at near-light speed. "These ships aren't meant to look pretty," she told her design team. "They're meant to kill aliens." The Justice-class cruisers were bigger and carried even more weapons. Each 800-meter ship had missile launchers that could fire 1,000 warheads at once. Their targeting computers could track and destroy hundreds of enemy ships at the same time. But the real monsters were the Retribution-class battleships. These mile-and-a-half-long giants were floating cities of death. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. They had shields that could stop asteroid impacts and armor plating thicker than a building. Admiral Claire Bennett walked through the construction bay where her flagship was being built. The New Haven's Revenge was the largest warship ever, constructed by human hands. It was even bigger than the regular battleships, designed to coordinate the movements of 500,000 other ships. "How much longer?" she asked the construction foreman. 2 more weeks, Admiral. She'll be ready for her first test flight then." Bennett smiled grimly. The aliens had destroyed one New Haven. Soon they would meet another one, and this New Haven would fight back. Captain Steve Morgan ran the largest military training program in human history. Before the war, Earth's Naval Academy graduated 200 officers per year. Now Morgan was training 50,000 new officers every month. The training centers were built in the asteroid belt, far from Earth where the noise and explosions wouldn't bother anyone. Each center was a small city floating in space, complete with classrooms, simulation chambers, and practice firing ranges. "Listen up, cadets," Morgan shouted to a class of new ship captains. "The aliens think we're soft, because we prefer peace to war. They're about to learn the difference between being peaceful and being weak." The students were farmers, teachers, factory workers, and shop owners. They had volunteered to leave their old lives behind and learn how to fight in space. They studied for 18 hours a day, learning everything about weapons, tactics, and ship operations. "Captain Morgan," one student asked, "what if we're not brave enough when the real fighting starts?" Morgan smiled. "Son, you left your family and your home to avenge people you never met. You're braver than you think." The training was hard, but nobody quit. Every student had seen the footage from New Haven. They knew why they were there. When they graduated, they would command ships in the largest fleet ever assembled. They would carry the hopes and anger of an entire species into battle. Commander Julie Harper oversaw the weapons testing program. Every gun, every missile, every defensive system had to work perfectly when the fleet reached enemy space. There would be no second chances. The test range was set up in an empty solar system 300 light-years from Earth. Old asteroids and decommissioned ships served as targets. The new weapons were incredibly powerful. A single fusion torpedo could vaporize a mountain. The railguns could punch holes through solid metal from 1,000,000 kilometers away. Test number 479, Harper announced over the radio. Firing. Pattern Omega. The destroyer. Test Ship 7 fired all its weapons at once. Torpedoes streaked across space like falling stars. Railgun slugs moved so fast they were invisible. The target asteroid, once the size of a small city, disappeared in a flash of light. All weapons functioning within normal parameters, Harper reported. This ship is ready for combat. One by one, every ship in the fleet passed its tests. The humans were not taking any chances. When they met the aliens, their weapons would work perfectly. Captain Danny Rivera commanded one of the first finished destroyers. The Avenging Angel was his ship, and he was proud of her. She was fast, tough, and deadly. Her crew of 300 sailors had trained together for 8 months. They knew every system, every weapon, every bolt in their ship. "Captain," his weapons officer called out, "we just received our combat assignment." Rivera took the message. "Pad and read it." His ship would be part of Attack Group 7 assigned to the inner assault ring. When the battle started, they would be among the first to engage the enemy. "Well, people," he announced to his crew, "it's official. We're going to war." The crew cheered. They had volunteered for this mission. They wanted revenge for New Haven, just like everyone else in the fleet. As the months passed, the fleet grew larger and more impressive. The shipyards worked day and night, never stopping. New ships launched every few minutes. The supply convoys bringing materials stretched across the solar system in an endless chain. The asteroid belt had been stripped almost bare. Every piece of useful metal went into the ships. The ice miners on the outer moons worked overtime to provide water for the crews. The fusion plants on Mercury ran at maximum power to fuel the construction. Dr. Amanda Foster watched the progress from her command center on Luna. Charts and graphs covered every wall, showing the status of ships, weapons, supplies, and crew. Training. The numbers were staggering. "Final count, Doctor?" General Thompson asked. 300,000 destroyers, 150,000 cruisers, 49,000 battleships, and 50 super dreadnoughts, she reported. Plus the flagship. Total, 500,001 warships. Thompson whistled softly. The largest military force in galactic history. And every single one of them wants to avenge New Haven. The crews were ready too. 100 million. Sailors, Marines, and officers had completed their training. They came from every human world, every culture, every background. But they were united by one thing: anger at what the aliens had done to innocent people. Lieutenant Sarah Kim had grown up on a farming world much like New Haven. When she saw the footage of the attack, she immediately volunteered for the Navy. Now she served as the communications officer on the battleship Righteous Fury. "My little sister was the same age as some of those kids who died," she told her fellow officers. "When we find the aliens who did this, I'm going to make sure they pay." Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Every sailor had a reason to fight. Some had friends or family who died at New Haven. Others were simply disgusted that anyone would murder children. All of them were ready to show the aliens what human justice looked like. The fleet's organization was a masterpiece of military planning. Admiral Bennett had divided the ships into 5 main battle groups, each with its own specialty. Battle Group Alpha would strike first, drawing enemy fire and attention. Battle Group Beta would flank the aliens from the side. Battle Groups Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon would surround the enemy and make sure none of them escaped. "It's not going to be a battle," Bennett told her senior officers. "It's going to be an execution." As the construction phase neared completion, intelligence reports began arriving from the edge of Zephyrian space. Scout ships, disguised as trading vessels, brought back information about alien defenses and fleet positions. Captain Greg Wilson ran the intelligence operation from a secret base in the outer system. His spies had identified the location of the Zephyrian home fleet and the aliens responsible for the New Haven massacre. War Marshal Kethavar is still in command of their main battle group, he reported to Admiral Bennett. The same alien who ordered the attack on our colony. He's waiting for us at Zephyr Prime with about 800 ships. Bennett smiled coldly. 800 ships against our 500,000. I almost feel sorry for them. Almost? I would feel sorry for them if they hadn't murdered our children. The final preparations were complete. The ships were built, the crews were trained, and the weapons were tested. The largest military force in the history of the galaxy was ready to depart. On the day before launch, President Rodriguez visited the fleet. She flew from ship to ship, meeting with crews and thanking them for their service. Her speech was broadcast to every vessel. You carry with you the hopes of all humanity, she told them. You go not as conquerors but as protectors. You go to make sure that no other human colony will ever suffer what happened to New Haven. You go to show the galaxy that humanity will not allow the murder of innocents. The crews stood at attention as she spoke. These were farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who had become warriors. The journey to Zephyrian space began on a cold Tuesday morning. Admiral Claire Bennett stood on the bridge of her flagship New Haven's Revenge and watched as 500,000 warships prepared to jump to hyperspace. The sight took her breath away, as far as her eyes could see, human warships filled the darkness. Destroyers hung in formation like silver daggers. Cruisers moved in perfect lines, their missile tubes gleaming in the starlight. The massive battleships looked like floating cities of metal and death. All ships report ready for jump, Admiral, her communications officer announced. Bennett nodded. Signal the fleet. Execute Operation Ragnarok. Jump in 3, 2, 1, mark. Space twisted around 500,000 ships as they entered hyperspace. The largest military force ever assembled by any species began its journey to war. The trip would take 3 months. Bennett had split the fleet into 5 task forces to avoid detection by enemy scouts. Each task force would take a different route, through hyperspace, arriving at Zephyr Prime from different directions at the same time. Task Force Alpha, led by Admiral Tony Clark, would approach from the galactic north. These 100,000 ships would be the first to engage the enemy, drawing their attention and fire. Clark was a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, known for his aggressive tactics and iron nerves. My boys are ready for a fight, Clark told Bennett, over the secure communication channel. We'll keep the aliens busy while the rest of you get into position. Task Force Beta, under Admiral Kelly Davis, would swing around through neutral space and attack from the galactic east. Davis had trained many of the fleet's new officers and knew their capabilities better than anyone. These crews might be new, but they're motivated, she reported. They've seen what the aliens did to our people. They won't hesitate when the shooting starts. The other 3 task forces would complete the encirclement, making sure no alien ship could escape the battle. For the first time in human history, an entire species had united for war. Captain Greg Wilson ran the intelligence operations from his command ship. His spy network stretched across known space, gathering information about alien movements and defenses. What he learned made him both confident and worried. The aliens are scared, he told Admiral Bennett during one of their regular briefings. They're recalling ships from all over their empire, but they're also confused. They can't believe we're actually coming to fight them. The Zephyrian leadership had expected humanity to negotiate or surrender after New Haven. The idea that the peaceful humans would build an army, this large, and travel across the galaxy for revenge was beyond their understanding. War Marshal Kethavar, the alien who ordered the massacre, was gathering his forces around the Zephyrian homeworld. Intelligence reports counted about 800 enemy warships, including their most powerful dreadnoughts. 800 against 500,000, Wilson mused. They don't stand a chance. Good, Bennett replied coldly. They didn't give the children of New Haven a chance either. Life aboard the ships during the long journey was a mix of preparation and remembrance. The crews spent their days training on weapon systems and reviewing battle plans. But in the evenings, they gathered to watch recordings from New Haven. Commander Julie Harper organized memorial services on her battleship, Righteous Fury. The ship's chaplain, Robert Taylor, had served on New Haven for 2 years before transferring to Earth. He knew many of the colonists personally. "I remember little Amy Rodriguez," he told the assembled crew. "She was 7 years old, always asking questions about everything. She wanted to be an engineer when she grew up, like her mother." His voice broke. She never got the chance. Services helped focus the crew's anger into determination. These sailors and officers had left their families and homes to travel across the galaxy. They needed to remember why. Captain Danny Rivera walked through his destroyer, Avenging Angel, every day, talking to his crew. They were good people, farmers, teachers, shop owners who had volunteered to become warriors. But they were still nervous about the coming battle. "Captain," one young gunner asked, "what if the aliens are better fighters than us?" Rivera put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Son, they might have better technology. They might have more experience, but we have something they don't understand." "What's that, sir?" "We're fighting for our children. They're fighting because they were ordered to. There's a big difference." The Zephyrian collective tried to negotiate during the human journey. Their diplomats contacted neutral species, offering to pay for the New Haven massacre with territory and resources. They promised to leave human space alone if the fleet turned back. President Rodriguez's response was broadcast across the galaxy. "The Zephyrians think they can buy their way out of murdering our children. They cannot. There is no price for genocide. There is no forgiveness for those who burn innocents. Our fleet will complete its mission." The message was heard on every civilized world. For the first time, other species began to understand that humanity was different from the races the Zephyrians had conquered before. Humans did not forget. Humans did not forgive the murder of their young. As the fleet approached enemy territory, long-range scouts began reporting alien defensive preparations. The Zephyrians had pulled ships from across their empire, creating the largest defensive force in their history. "They have orbital platforms around their home world," Captain Wilson reported. "Missile stations, beam weapons, shield generators, plus their mobile fleet is positioned in a defensive sphere." Admiral Bennett studied the tactical displays. The alien defenses looked impressive. In any normal battle, they would be nearly impossible to overcome. But this was not a normal battle. This was 500,000 human warships seeking justice for murdered children. "All task force commanders," Bennett announced over the secure channel, "begin final approach. Remember, we don't want prisoners. We don't want negotiations. We want every ship that participated in the New Haven massacre destroyed." The task forces moved into their final positions. Task Force Alpha would drop out of hyperspace first, directly in front of the alien homeworld. The enemy would focus all their attention on these 100,000 ships. Then, while the aliens were engaged, the other 4 task forces would appear from different directions. The Zephyrians would find themselves surrounded by nearly 500,000 additional human warships. Lieutenant Sarah Kim checked her communications equipment for the 100th time. When the battle started, she would coordinate targeting data between dozens of ships. Every message had to be perfect, every order clear and precise. "You nervous?" asked her friend, Lieutenant Mike Chen. "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "But also, ready. Those aliens killed 2.5 million people. It's time they learned what that means." Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. The crews were scared, but they were also determined. They had traveled across the galaxy for this moment. They would not let the victims of New Haven down. As the fleet neared the edge of Zephyrian space, Admiral Bennett made one final speech to all 100 million members of her command. "Sailors and officers of the human fleet, in a few hours, we will arrive at our destination. The aliens who murdered our people at New Haven are waiting for us. They think their defenses will protect them. They think we will negotiate when we see their strength. They are wrong." Her voice carried across hyperspace to every ship in the fleet. "We are not here to conquer. We are not here to steal their worlds or enslave their people. We are here for one reason only: justice. The aliens who thought they could murder our children and walk away are about to learn what human justice looks like. The crews listened in silence, preparing themselves for battle. When we drop out of hyperspace, show no mercy to those who showed none to our innocence. Fight not just for victory, but for every child who died in the flames of New Haven. Fight, so that no alien species will ever again think they can harm human families without consequences. Bennett paused, thinking of her own children safe on Earth. Remember New Haven. Remember our dead. And show the galaxy what happens when humanity goes to war. The fleet was ready. 500,000 ships filled with angry humans approached the Zephyrian home system. In a few hours, the largest space battle in galactic history would begin. War Marshal Kethvar waited with his 800 ships, confident that his defenses would hold. He had no idea what was coming for him. Soon he would learn that some crimes could never be forgiven. Some acts of evil demanded complete destruction. And humanity, once roused to war, was as terrible as any force in the universe. The children of New Haven would have their justice. The Battle of Zephyr Prime began at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, ship time, when Task Force Alpha dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 100,000 human warships appeared in the space above the alien home world, their hulls gleaming in the light of the alien sun. War Marshal Kethvar was drinking his morning meal when his sensors officer began screaming. The Zephyrian commander rushed to his bridge and looked at the tactical display. For a moment, he could not believe what he was seeing. "How many ships?" he demanded. 100,000, War Marshal. All human design. All armed for battle. Kethvar felt his blood turn cold. The humans had built an invasion fleet 10 times larger than anything in Zephyrian history. But this was only the beginning of his nightmare. Admiral Tony Clark commanded Task Force Alpha from his battleship, Earth's Wrath. He had volunteered to lead the first attack because he wanted to look into the eyes of the aliens who murdered children. His 100,000 ships spread out in attack formation, their weapons charging for battle. "All ships," Clark announced over the battle channel, "you are cleared to engage. Show them what happens when you kill human families." The first shots came from the human cruisers. 30,000 Justice-class ships fired their long-range missiles at the same time. The space between the fleets filled with millions of fusion warheads, each one bright as a small star. The Zephyrian orbital defenses opened fire in return. Massive beam, weapons and particle cannons struck out at the human fleet. The aliens had the most advanced military technology in their part of the galaxy. Their weapons could destroy entire cities with a single shot, but they only had 800 ships and a few dozen orbital platforms. The humans had 100,000 ships in the first wave alone. Captain Danny Rivera watched from the bridge of his destroyer, Avenging Angel, as the alien beams reached out toward them. His ship shook as a near miss boiled away part of his armor plating. "Return. Fire," he ordered. "All weapons." The Avenging Angel fired her railguns and torpedo tubes. Around her, 30,000 other destroyers did the same. The combined firepower was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. War Marshal Kethvar watched in horror as his outer defense ring began to collapse. Human weapons were not as advanced as Zephyrian technology, but there were so many of them that it did not matter. His shields failed under the massive bombardment. His ships began to explode. "Send word to the High Command," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them the humans have come with a fleet beyond counting. We need reinforcements." "Sir," the officer replied, "the humans are jamming all communications. I cannot reach anyone outside this system." That was when the second nightmare began. Space twisted and bent as 4 more human task forces dropped out of hyperspace. They appeared from the north, south, east, and west, surrounding the alien fleet completely. Admiral Claire Bennett's flagship New Haven's Revenge led Task Force Omega from the galactic south. As her ship appeared in normal space, she looked out at the alien fleet and felt a cold satisfaction. These were the ships that had murdered innocent children. Now they would pay. "All task forces," she announced on the command channel, "begin encirclement pattern. No alien ship leaves this system alive." The sight that greeted the Zephyrian defenders was beyond their worst nightmares. 500,000 human warships surrounded them in perfect formation. The human fleet stretched from horizon to horizon, a wall of metal and weapons that blotted out the stars. Lieutenant Sarah Kim counted the enemy ships on her sensors. 812 alien vessels, Captain. They're completely surrounded. Her captain, Tom Wilson, nodded grimly. Good. Now they know how the people of New Haven felt. The human attack was coordinated and precise. Admiral Bennett had planned every move months in advance. The destroyers would strike first, using their speed to get close to the aliens. The cruisers would provide long-range fire support. The battleships would hammer any alien ship that tried to fight back. Commander Julie Harper watched from her battleship Righteous Fury as thousands of human ships began their attack runs. The space around Zephyr Prime became a light show of weapons fire and explosions. But this was not a battle. It was an execution. The Zephyrians fought back with desperate courage. Their ships were powerful and their crews were experienced. War Marshal Kethvar himself led a charge of heavy dreadnoughts directly at the human center, hoping to break through the encirclement. He managed to destroy 50 human ships before the return fire reached him. 2,000 human vessels focused their weapons on his flagship Stellar Dominion. The mighty Zephyrian dreadnought, which had conquered a dozen worlds, vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. Captain Ryan Brooks, the freighter captain who had witnessed the New Haven massacre, served as a gunnery officer on the destroyer, Justice. Served. When he saw Kethvar's ship explode, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. That was for the kids, he whispered. The battle lasted 14 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The human fleet had more ships, more weapons, and more determination than any military force in galactic history. One by one, the alien vessels were hunted down and destroyed. Some Zephyrians tried to surrender. They broadcast messages asking for mercy, promising to pay for their crimes, begging to be allowed to live. The humans ignored them all. There had been no mercy for the children of New Haven. Admiral Kelly Davis commanded the final assault on the orbital platforms around Zephyr Prime. These massive stations had protected the alien homeworld for 1,000 years. Her ships tore them apart in minutes. All platforms destroyed, she reported to Admiral Bennett. The planet is defenseless. Bennett looked down at the world below. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, much like Earth. Millions of innocent aliens lived there, going about their daily lives unaware that their government had committed genocide. Signal the planet, Bennett ordered. Tell them we are not like their leaders. We do not make war on civilians. But every military facility, every government building, every symbol of the regime that ordered the murder of our children will be destroyed. The orbital bombardment was precise and limited. Human targeting computers, guided by months of intelligence work, struck only military and government targets. The alien population centers were left untouched. The Zephyrian capital building, where the decision to attack New Haven had been made, was reduced to rubble. The military academies where alien officers learned to make war on civilians were turned to ash. The shipyards that built the ships used to murder human families were melted into metal puddles. But the schools, hospitals, and homes were spared. The humans would show the galaxy the difference between justice and revenge. As the bombardment ended, Admiral Bennett broadcast a message to the surviving Zephyrian government. People of the Zephyrian Collective, your military has been destroyed. Your fleet is space dust. Your leaders who ordered the massacre at New Haven are dead. This is what happens when you murder human children. Her voice was calm but filled with iron. Let this be a lesson to every species in the galaxy. Humanity is peaceful by choice, not weakness. We prefer to talk rather than fight. We share our worlds with alien refugees. We trade fairly with other species. But if you harm our families, if you murder our children, we will come for you. The message was broadcast not just to Zephyr Prime, but to every world in known space. We will come with fleets so large they darken your skies. We will hunt you, down no matter where you hide. We will not stop until justice is served. Humanity remembers. Humanity protects its own. And humanity never ever forgives the murder of innocents. The human fleet remained in the Zephyr system for one more day, making sure their message was understood. Then, their mission complete, they began the long journey home. News of the victory reached Earth through quantum communication networks. On every human world, in every space station, in every mining outpost, people celebrated. The children of New Haven had been avenged. The aliens who thought they could murder human families had learned the price of their crime. But the real victory was not the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet. It was the message sent to every species in the galaxy. Humanity was not the weak, scattered race that others had believed. They were a sleeping giant that, once awakened, could mobilize resources and determination on a scale that defied imagination. Captain Steve Morgan, who had trained many of the fleet's officers, watched the victory celebration on Earth from his ship's communication screen. His students had performed perfectly in battle. They had shown the galaxy what human courage looked like. "Well done, people," he said to his crew. "New Haven can rest in peace." From that day forward, no alien species ever again attacked human civilians. The galaxy had learned a simple truth: humanity was kind to friends and terrible to enemies. They would share their technology and worlds with peaceful species, but they would completely destroy anyone who threatened human families. The memorial built on the ruins of New Haven listed the names of all 2.3 million victims. At the bottom, carved in stone that would last forever, were simple words. They were not forgotten. They were avenged. Their sacrifice united humanity and protected our future. May their children play safely among the stars. The fleet that returned to Earth was welcomed as heroes. But they knew the real heroes were the colonists, who died at New Haven.